Hello, readers! Welcome back to Reading in the Middle, where middle grade tales come alive with heart, humor, and the unexpected. I'm your host, Annisha Jeffries. Today, I'm thrilled to welcome debut author J.A. Dauber, whose brand new middle grade novel, Press 1 for Invasion, published on September 9th, 2025, delivers a hilarious, action-packed adventure perfect for reluctant and enthusiastic readers alike. When 10-year-old Matt discovers a phone abandoned on the sidewalk, he thinks he's hit the jackpot until the photos he takes reveals the crossing guard as a monster. Soon, Matt and his friend Markayla are swept into the alien invasion plot with tentacle conspirators, wild battles in the cafeteria, and cosmic calamities to save the planet. Today, we'll dig into what inspired this quirky, fast-paced romp and chat about what themes Dauber hopes young readers will carry along with them after closing the book. So, get ready, buckle up, because we're in for a ride. Let's begin. Jeremy, hi. Welcome to Reading in the Middle. How are you today?
Oh, I'm great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to this conversation.
Yes, me too. So, I have a question. I just read your book and I'm loving it. Comes out next month in September, and the story, it hooked me right away from the beginning. Without giving too much away, what was the very first spark of inspiration for Press 1 for Invasion?
That's a great question, because a lot of times for me, the story comes from a particular image, a spark or something like that, right? I mean, and then you kind of write the book to figure out what caused that image, what was the story behind that image. And so for me, the image was, you have this kid and they have a phone in their hand. The kid is like 10 years old, the age of one of my kids. He's holding up the phone and he looks through it and he sees an alien. This is in kind of a crossing guard uniform through the phone. But then he puts the phone down and it's just a regular looking crossing guard. And then, up, alien, down, regular person. And I was like, what is going on? And the book came away from that to try and explain how that could happen, what had to happen as a result.
Yeah, I love it, because I think one of the reasons this book works so well is that it starts with something so relatable, right? Wanting something your parents say you can't have, right?
That's exactly right. That's the dynamic, right? You want it, you're a kid, you want, and you're like, your parents can't say you can't have it. And, like I said, I have a 10-year-old, I have a 12-year-old, I have a 7-year-old, and me, my wife, all of our friends, right? We're having these conversations. When do you give your kid a phone? When, what's the timing? What do you do with the phone? What kind of phone? But it's always, they want it and we're kind of holding back,
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, well, what happens if, you really want one and you find one and then it turns out not to be exactly the phone that you thought it would be. And it ends up being a portal into a story that was much grander and bigger than you could have been.
Yeah, when you were a kid, was there one thing you really, really wanted, couldn't get? Now, I know it wasn't a phone, but...
No, that's exactly right. It was not a phone. Well, I will say that for a while, I didn't want my own phone line. That's the age that I am, right, where you could have your own phone line. But I think that the thing that I really wanted, sort of more than anything else, was a stereo. Like, that's what I wanted, right? Yeah. I could play my own music in my room. I could do, whatever I want. And eventually that worked out, right? but for a while, that was what I really wanted. Yeah. It's a great question. I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So your main character, Matt, and his friend Marcella, they have a great dynamic. How did you figure out who they were and how they'd work together under, let's just say, some unusual circumstance?
Yeah. I think, one of the things, my day job is also a professor teaching literature. And one of the things that, I always talk to my students about is how character comes as a result of action, right? Action reveals kind of character. And so, this is an adventure. It's a fun plotted adventure with lots of hijinks and twists and turns and things like that. And so a lot of this is, what I like to regular kids going to do They're not perfect. They're not right. They're regular kids in the middle of all of this. And so I tried to kind of follow them around and just sort of watch what they would do. And it turned out that they had a lot of interesting responses that I didn't necessarily expect them to happen. I knew that Matt, this will not be a big surprise. It's very early in the novel. Matt really does like Marcella. He has a crush on her, I think it's fair to say.
Mhm.
He doesn't know quite what to do with that because he's, let's say, 10 or so, he's middle grade, but he knows that he likes it. And part of his finding the phone is he really would like to take, this in the first page or two, he really would like to take some pictures of Marcella. And, that just seemed like a natural way to sort of start the characters off and then just watch them go.
And this story has a perfect mix of humor and high stakes moments. How did you make sure readers are laughing, but also can't wait to see what happens next?
First of all, thank you for asking the question in that way. That's the ideal response, I think, for a reader. I'm glad that you felt that way, and I hope other people will too. I think, there is a way in which, horror or scary bits or suspense and comedy have always gone hand in hand. One of the things that we sometimes do, is to say, well, I can't believe this is happening. If you don't want to do something that's too scary, and certainly I didn't want to do that, one of the ways to make sure that you have that nice balance is to say, there's something kind of ridiculous about this. And I do want to spoil one thing for all you people listening to the podcast out there. The invasion is not a success. The earth is not reduced to a smoldering cinder at the end. Nobody's, that you kind of know that going in, right? It's a middle grade novel, right? So there's going to be something fun that's going to happen too. And humor, I think, helps that a lot by saying, okay, it sort of leavens this idea that, oh my goodness, here is this crazy thing where these are really life and death stakes, not just for these kids, but for the planet. There has to be something fun and funny and adventurous about it to make us feel like, okay, this is all a kind of a fun ride.
Yeah, because one of my favorite parts of reading your book was discovering those little surprises, details that made the world feel unique and full of energy. When you were writing, what's one moment that you couldn't wait for readers to discover?
Every kind of book for kids, and in some sense, every great story of adventure is for adults and for kids, is the when your protagonists discover that there's more to them than they really thought was possible. And that they really say, I have the capacity, I have the shoulders to kind of be someone bigger than I thought I could be, or than other people thought that I could be, but more myself. And when Matt and Marcella have those moments of discovery, that was something where I was like, wow, they have kind of gotten away from me and they've become their own people. And I loved that. And I sort of love that for the audience too. So, lots of adventure, lots of fun, lots of funniness, but also I think some genuinely emotional moments too. And those I think are fun.
And Matt goes through a lot of changes over the course of the story.
Yeah.
What do you hope your readers think? What do you hope they think about after they turn that last page?
Well, I hope that the first thing I hope is that they'll say, boy, let me tell all of my friends how good this book is.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
And they should all read it. But aside from that, I also think that if there's one thing, and I don't think this spoils anything in this story, if there's one thing that really is the rock on which the story turns, it's that everybody is valuable. Every human life, every person
Absolutely.
is. And I think that we cherish people because we recognize that in others. And it's a very basic lesson, but it's a lesson that can, and in this case, I think in some ways does, save the world.
Yes.
And how that happens, I leave for others to read and to find out, right? But yeah.
Now, I was thinking when you mentioned the first time when he has the phone and he looks through it and sees the crossing guard as an alien and takes the phone down and it's a regular crossing guard, it reminded me of that movie, oh my gosh, They Live, I believe.
Yes. Very good. Yes, exactly so. On the other side of what I do, I write nonfiction books. And one of those nonfiction books that came out last year is A History of American Horror.
Yeah.
And, They Live is one of these great horror movies, as you're saying. And that image of, is very much, I think, influenced by They Live. The book is entirely different, I should say. But
Totally different.
Totally different. That idea of, we are in a world where we don't actually see what's going on. And there's something that can open up our eyes to these other things, which it can be extremely scary. It can be wonderful. It can be transcendent. That's as old as certainly horror fiction, but all kinds of fiction as well. But that particular image, I definitely think They Live is somewhere rattling around there. Although, as I say, then it goes in a very different direction.
Reminded me of that, you know.
Yeah, it's very much so. Very much so.
And for our listeners, that movie is like a 1980s movie with, I think, Rowdy Piper, wrestler.
Yes.
And, oh my gosh, I forgot the other actor, but it's an old 80s movie, but it's a good one. It's for adults, but as a teenager back then, I was all into that. So.
Yeah, no, it is. If you are a grown up, it is a fun movie to watch, and you'll find all sorts of interesting satirical things in it about the 1980s, which I think are very interesting. Definitely recommend. And, once your kids are much older, you can tell, and they've loved this book, you can tell them, okay, go watch They Live, and you'll enjoy the rhymes, if not anything.
Absolutely. That's why I wanted to mention, I don't want any young person, if they are listening, to say, oh yeah, I want to see They Live. Parents, you watch first if you haven't seen it, and then you make that decision. It's just like wanting that phone. When do you let a child watch adult movies? Like movies for mature audiences. So I have a question for you, Jeremy. What's the weirdest, silliest, and the most fun detail in this book that you were just itching to write?
That is a great question. I think that there is a moment or two in the novel where the aliens talk about different kinds of, let's say, ceremonies or processes that take place in their society. And that was a tremendous amount of fun to write because, on the one hand, you want them to be kind of vaguely analogous to things that happen on Earth, but really reminding you, oh, these are quite different kinds of beings and things like that. And to try and write that also in a way that would be amusing and fun for middle grade audiences was a lot of fun. But I think there are points, for example, and again, I think this doesn't give anything away, where one of the aliens is forced to file a report to the home planet. And they go on in these sort of very flowery details about what the report is. And that was a tremendous amount of fun to write because you have to write it as if it's this kind of alien civilization in their kind of way. Lots of fun.
And something else I loved is how Matt's journey starts with wanting something for himself and turns into risking everything for his friends, his family, and his planet. What do you hope readers take away from that transformation?
I think that one of the things that I see in my own kids as they grow is the way in which, and happens, I think, hopefully to everybody and certainly to almost everybody, that you begin to become more aware of the world around you. And when you're a very little kid, your circle, as it should be, and as it understandably is really narrowed to yourself and what you want. Yeah. And as you get older and older, you begin to think about other people in your family and those you care about in the world. And you start moving to become sort of bigger, and not just obviously physically, but your heart comes bigger and all these kind of things. And that journey is something, as you're pointing out, I think so rightly, that Matt, in some ways, he's kind of forced by these very odd circumstances, but is forced to do. And being a human being, he doesn't do it exactly in the noble way or the right, or whatever this would mean, in exactly the right way that you might say, well, my ideal hero of fiction would do it. But I think that's what I hope makes him sort of a human and recognizable character, is that he kind of stumbles and backwards and kind of makes his way into it, but eventually makes some really powerful choices that he can look back on and say, with all of my road, I'm in a different place, and it's a different place that I'm happy to be in. And other people have helped me get to that place too. Nobody gets there by themselves in the world.
Now,
Marcella and some of these other people.
I'm not spoiling anything, but I'm going to mention the lunch lady. I'm just going to say I didn't see it coming, or that she'd be a reluctant invader. Was she always written that way? And did that twist surprise you while writing? I hope I'm not spoiling anything.
I don't think you're spoiling very much. We find that out pretty early in the novel. That basically what was pretty clear was that if there was something about this phone, right, going back to what we said, and this is for the grown-ups, don't spoil this for your kids because they'll enjoy the twist. But there's something about this phone clearly that it can do this thing. Well, why would he have this phone in the first place? Well, it has to be someone else's phone. It probably isn't the bad guy's phone. So it has to be a good guy, but it has to be a good guy as an alien. And so you have this sort of good guy, bad guy dynamic. And so I knew there would always have to be sort of another alien. And it would have to be an alien who would have picked this kid, because otherwise the novel feels too random. It's like, oh, they happened. And what would that be? And so a lot of times these characters, as I know you know, and I know much of the audience knows, right? These characters develop as a set of solutions to a particular set of narrative problems and then become invested with lives of their own in this way. So, I knew there had to be someone who had changed sides, so to speak, but why had they changed sides? That grew in the telling, and as the novel got more, for lack of a better word, heart to it, rather than just plot, it became clearer and clearer. Yeah. So I guess that's what I don't want to spoil too much, but I guess that's what I'll say for now. We can talk more.
Also, too, it's so funny. And it's funny, it's laugh out loud, and then there's real danger. There are alien pets, there's a giant oven in space, but you still keep the stakes high in the story. How do you balance the humor with the, oh no, they might not make it moments?
And I think, it's funny because this is one of the great, how would I say this? One of the great tensions, maybe, of a certain kind of adventure story, right? Where we know from the beginning, things are going to be all right. From a grown-up perspective, you don't go to a James Bond movie going, I wonder if James Bond is going to make it out this time, right? He's going to make it out, like it's going to happen. But how do you have that sense of tension? And there's a certain way in which some of the very is that you have this kind of lighter tone that's mixed in with it to say, we all kind of know that and we're all going to have fun on this ride, even though the ride is going to have some real suspense to it. And so the suspense, I think, comes in part not from the weather, but how. How is Matt going to think of a way to come in? And if he has another good quality that we haven't talked about, I think it is that he has a certain kind of ingenuity that comes up under pressure. Now, it doesn't always work because he's 10. So sometimes he's not quite as ingenious as he thinks he is, and he gets into more trouble. But he is able to come up with it, and we're watching him kind of think things through. And then sometimes it goes well, and sometimes it doesn't. He's like, oh, no, wait, I got to think again. And that's a fun process. And the disappointment can also be, as you say, kind of funny, where he's like, oh, I got it. Oh, that didn't work. Oh, that was bad. Okay. Oh, well, how about this?
And you're right. And because he's 10 years old, he's so relatable. He's willing to risk, everything to save the people that he cares about. And it's so important when young readers are reading this, they can feel like, oh, you know what, if this were to happen, I could do the same thing like Matt, right? I could do that. I can save the world. And it gives a young reader some power, because at that age you don't feel like you have any power. And that's what's so great about this book, is that you really are going through or walking through what Matt and Marcella are going through, and it's so much fun.
I do think, one of the things that I really enjoyed about writing this one is trying to set it in our world. But obviously, there's this big exception, but of the aliens, or so we think. But this idea that this is not some mythical land. This is not right. This is in any town, USA, with almost any kid or any kids, and you can put yourself. And I have a 10-year-old, as I said before, one of my 3 kids, and I see him walking down the street, kind of doing karate moves or whatever, and he's thinking, what am I doing that? Like, ninjas could be coming from everywhere, right? And I could be like, and I was like, let's get that spirit of what our kids really are thinking into this world, right? It's not I love fantasy books that are set in magical lands, and I love it. Don't get me wrong, but there's something also special about sort of bringing the magic here.
Now, you've written other books too, but is this your first? I believe this is your first middle grade book?
This is my first middle grade book. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. How does that differ? How does that feel? Do you feel like this, like you may tap yourself to continue writing for middle grade, or you just were like, I'm just going to dabble in it? But it seems like, you may not turn back, or maybe you just do all you'll write for all ages.
Well, I have to say that I really, I've been saying to my wife that apparently, everyone has always said I've had the maturity level of a 12-year-old for a long time, but I think that's right. I really love writing for this cohort. I think much more, in fact, than I do for any of the other kinds of books. Maybe I shouldn't say this, but it's true. Of the other kinds of cohorts that I write for, it really is something about the kind of magical storytelling that you can do at this age that really appeals to the writer in me. So I'm definitely down to do much more of this. I hope Matt and Marcella's adventures are not quite over. That will depend in some sense on this audience, I suspect, but I hope everyone will make this a big hit. But I think there's more road to go there. And then there are other stories that I want to tell that are different as well for this audience, but I love it.
Now, I had an interview with James Ponte, and he had mentioned, because, he has his Sherlock Society, and then he has his other books, Framed, and I don't want to mess up the other titles, but he has other series and different books. And so I can see Press One for Invasion being a series, and then you could go on and do other books as well. So there's just no limit at all.
I would love that. So listen, everybody. That I think that would be great. And Ponte is not only a great writer. I think the Sherlock Society books are. I say books because I got a little advance on the second one. I think are great. He's a great writer. He's a great guy. He and I are actually doing an event together next month, and I can't wait. But what a wonderful guy. I can't say enough good things about him. If you're not, I'm sure you are buying his books if you're listening to this podcast. But go do it. It's great.
And I mentioned him because you guys are going to be doing something together. It would be wonderful to collaborate. That would be awesome.
Look, I'm up for it.
I don't know why I'm putting it out there like I know what I'm talking about, but it would be great to have your characters kind of like, one of those shows when they mix in the characters.
Yeah, like a crossover.
Yeah. Crossover. It would be dynamite. So it's something to think about. If you want to give me credit in the Philly, you know what? No. So yeah, that would be great. So I just wanted to say that because it's so much fun. It just reminded me of the fun, like when I used to read fun books as a middle grade kid. I just had a lot of fun reading your book. It was I had like laugh out loud fun. And I also was touched and moved as well with your book. So I just wanted to mention that, listeners, it's coming out next month, September. So you want to be able to grab it anytime at your independent bookstore or library. It's fun. Now, I have our quick lightning round session. Are you ready?
I'm ready. Here I go.
Okay, here we go. Describe Press One for Invasion in 3 emojis.
Ooh. I'm not a great emoji, but I'm going to say UFO. I assume there's a UFO emoji. Shocked face. Right, shocked face. And then let's say oven.
Very good. Name one book, movie, or show that captures the vibe of your story.
This isn't quite lightning round.
That's okay.
Not perfectly, but A Wrinkle in Time.
Ooh, yes, I could see that. And if you had to choose one thing from a school cafeteria to help you in an emergency, what would it be?
If it was an actual emergency, a fire extinguisher, and if it was a fake emergency, a sloppy Joe.
Ooh. I love that. That's great.
That's a great question.
And this is a big one. If you came across something on the sidewalk that wasn't yours, would you pick it up?
If I thought it was valuable to someone, yes. Otherwise, no. Nice. I guess maybe it was trash, I'd put it in the garbage, but depends how gross it was, to be perfectly honest.
My goodness, Jeremy, thank you for joining me on Reading in the Middle. Readers, Press One for Invasion comes out in September. And trust me, you're going to want to find out exactly what Matt gets himself into. So I want to thank you again for being on the podcast and being on the show. This was such a fun conversation. I hope you enjoyed it as well.
It was so much fun. Thank you so much for having me. This was great. And I hope we'll do it again with future books from.
Yeah, definitely. Most definitely.
Wraps up another episode of Reading in the Middle. A huge thank you to Jeremy Dauber, whose debut novel, Press 1 for Invasion, released on September 9th, 2025, for journeying with us into a world where prankish phones and tentacle lunch ladies collide in out of this world fun. If you loved our chat and want more insider looks into the voices shaping middle grade fiction, be sure to subscribe and leave a review, and share this with all your reluctant readers, middle grade readers, teachers, librarians, anyone you know who loves books. I'm Annisha Jeffries. Keep reading in the middle and watching the skies, just in case.